Hello YouTube, I'm the Foam Witch, and in this video I'm going to show you how I made the helmet of one of my favourite Marvel characters, Black Panther. Now before we get into it, if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, hit that subscribe button now, that would be incredible. Otherwise, let's do this. So for this build, I'm using templates from the incredible Cosplay Apprentice. You can find them on Instagram and YouTube, and I'll add the links in the description of this video. So first things first, all the pieces need cutting out. Quite a few of these pieces are mirrored, meaning you only have to cut them once out of the paper to be able to cut them twice out of the foam. And once all the paper pieces have been cut out, it's time to start cutting the foam. For the main part of this build, I used 5mm foam, but for the details I used 2mm. Now it's just a case of tracing around the templates and cutting them out. As you can see, this template has lots of registration marks, which is really handy when you're sticking them together so you can line everything up perfectly. And as I always say, it's not a Foam Witch video unless there's a thumbs up. This template is really detailed. Now you don't have to add all these details if you don't want to, but adding them will make the finished product a whole lot better. Now it's time to start sticking the foam together, and I decided to start with the forehead piece. I think this template follows an order of how you should stick things together, but I do like a bit of chaos. To stick all the foam together, I'm using what I always use, and that's contact adhesive from Polyprops. Now I can't stress this enough that if you are using any kind of contact adhesive, you should be wearing a respirator, because if you're anything like me, it will give you headaches and make you feel sick. As you can see, there's more detail been added on the nose piece, and I'll show you a bit later in this video how to do that. Now I'm sticking the forehead piece to the face piece. Once these pieces were stuck together, there was quite a large gap in the nose area. I probably stuck the templates together wrong or missed a piece out somewhere, but it was easily rectified further into the build. I'm using 2mm foam for these cheek parts. I also did the same on the forehead, and this is stuck underneath the 5mm foam to give a layered effect. It's going to make more sense why this has happened later in the video when I add some more details. It just gives it an extra layer of depth. This is what I meant earlier in the video when I said some of the pieces are mirrored. You just cut out the one paper piece and flip it over so you get two foam pieces. To add some of the detail lines on the helmet, I've taken my wood burning tool and I'm just burning them into the foam. I'll use the wood burning tool if I need the detail lines to be a bit thicker than if I was to score them into the foam. But if you are going to use a wood burning tool, please wear a respirator because the fumes it gives off are toxic. And when I'm sticking together, I'm just making sure to line up those registration marks so I know that everything is stuck where it's supposed to be. Next up was the ear parts, and I'll be honest, the detail on this did scare me slightly, but I really wanted to give it a go because I wanted to try and make the helmet look as amazing as Cosplay Apprentice did. To get these millions of detail lines in, I just take my craft knife and score the foam about halfway through, not all the way, and then once it's heated up with a heat gun, it expands the score lines and it makes the detail pop. Now, the lines I did weren't perfect by any means, but as you can see, this just adds a whole new level of detail to the helmet. This might not be the best project to start on if you are an absolute beginner to foam craft. It might scare you a little bit because it does have an awful lot of detail and some quite intricate parts. Or it might not scare you at all. It might make you fall in love with foam craft and realise what you can actually do with this material. Now it's time to add the back plate of the helmet, and the base of the build is complete. Before I moved on to building up the detail, I just took my Dremel to smooth down any edges that were a bit rough. And because it's something that I have built, there was loads of messy seams and rough edges. Once all the edges have been smoothed off, it was time to start building up the detail. I used 2mm foam for these line parts on the cheeks. The muzzle was 5mm foam, which got heated up with the heat gun, and I just pressed my thumb into it to round it off slightly. And I did exactly the same with these eyebrow cheek parts, just heated it up with the heat gun, pushed my thumb into it to give it a kind of bubble look. The chin piece was then added, and this had the same scored details that the ear parts did. Some more details were then added to the back of the helmet just to embellish it a bit more. And also onto the ear parts. And then it was time to add the really detailed parts to the forehead and the cheeks. Now on Cosplay Apprentice's build, he adds LED lights and electronics to these parts, but I wasn't even going to attempt that because I had no idea what I was doing. So what I did was I traced out the detail onto the foam, then I used my craft knife to cut through the first layer of foam, and then I picked out any of the bits that I'd just cut to leave the detail layer on the top. Don't know if that made any sense the way I described it, but hopefully you understand what I mean. Now, to add even more texture, I'm going to drill all these little tiny holes. There's my Sneak Energy shaker in the background. It's not a paid promotion, but if you are watching and would like to sponsor me, go on. Although all that energy did come in really handy when I had to drill each individual hole, and this took so long. But it was well worth it because it's just one of those extra details that just makes it look incredible. And here you can hopefully see what I meant when I was talking about cutting the detail on the cheek parts and the forehead. Now I just needed to clean up the helmet a little bit with some white spirit, which removed any stray glue marks or any pen marks because I am a messy builder. I also wanted to fill in my absolutely terrible seam lines on the nose to make sure that they were barely noticeable. And to do this, I used Quick Seal and then let it dry for a full 24 hours. Now it's time to get it ready for the paint, so it's time to seal the foam. I did 3 layers of the Hex Flex first, and then I used another 3 layers of the Seal Prime on top of that. And all of this made it super smooth and ready for the painting. There were some parts that I wanted to be really high gloss. This was the glossiest paint I had, so I just painted those parts with this. Then I moved on to painting all the silver parts. Anytime I need to paint any small silver details, I use Vallejo airbrush paint and brush it on by hand because it's really good coverage and it leaves barely any brush strokes. Then I painted the layered detail on the cheeks and the forehead purple just to make it really stand out. There's another Sneak Energy shaker in the background, honestly not on purpose. Then I wanted to protect the paintwork, so I sprayed it with a layer of matte Valor from Polyprops. Although I wouldn't use this if I was to make the helmet again because it did leave a slightly glossy finish to the whole helmet, which is not what I wanted. Anyway, it was done and I couldn't change it now, so now onto the eyes. For this, I just glued in some really cheap silver sunglass lenses. Why does it look like Spider-Man? And with the lenses being added, the Black Panther helmet was complete. If you are still here watching this video, I just want to give you a huge thank you. If you've enjoyed watching this video, if you could give it a thumbs up like, that would be really appreciated. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, if you could hit that subscribe button now, that would be incredible. I want to give a huge shout out to the Cosplay Apprentice because if it wasn't for your templates, this build wouldn't have been possible, so make sure to go follow them on all their social media channels. And if you really enjoy the content that I make and you'd like to help the channel, I do have a Ko-fi page set up, but nothing is ever expected. So huge thanks again to the Cosplay Apprentice. I really hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.